You're listening to the Better Relationships After Baby podcast, where I believe things can actually be better than ever after having kids. But it takes intentional conversation, personal growth, and community to get there. I'm Chelsea Skaggs, life and relationship coach, fellow mom and wife, and lover of taboo topics. I'm here to give you insight, practical tools, and conversations to help your relationships survive and thrive through the big changes of parenthood. Let's get into today's episode. Hey friends, welcome back to another episode of Better Relationships After Baby. And this is a great episode for so many of you. Those of you who are trying to conceive right now, those of you who have been through the trying to conceive journey and are now kind of picking the pieces back up maybe after baby, those of you who have friends, sisters, cousins that are in the trying to conceive space. I have invited a dear friend, someone that I really admire, into this conversation today, specifically to talk about sex, woohoo, and intimacy in the trying to conceive space, in the fertility spaces of someone's journey. Erin wears many hats, but for this particular episode, I wanted to invite her on for her expertise in fertility, conception, and because she's just a lot of fun to talk with. And I knew that she would be willing to get into a conversation that is sometimes taboo and awkward. But those of you who've listened to this podcast for a while, you know that I love getting taboo and awkward. So, Erin McCaffrey Crespo, so nice to have you here. Can you just tell us a little bit about your life, the chaos in your life, professionally, personally, and what brings you into this birth, postpartum, conception space as a doula, an expert, and all the things that you bring to the table.
Absolutely. Chelsea, thank you so much for having me on. Yes. The chaos that is my life and the path to being here is always a little funny to try and recap. So I currently own my own business called Thrive Doula Services. I'm a birth doula, an infant feeding counselor, childbirth educator, and also do a lot of counseling and one-on-one sessions for folks who are either trying to conceive or have questions about their reproductive health that they are not getting adequately answered within the healthcare system. And I really love working with these kind of clients. And it's something that I feel really well positioned to do because before I started my own little business here and before I got into this side of the birth work world, I came to this because I've been a nurse practitioner for the last 18 years. So I started out as a labor and delivery and postpartum nurse, went on to become a family nurse practitioner, worked in several different settings, but everything from OB to full scope primary care. We call it womb to tomb care. So prenatal, pediatrics, adults and geriatrics, and later on specializing in HIV care, HIV primary care and the reproductive health of people living with HIV and building their families in that setting. So that was really a lot of fun. But after I had my fourth baby, yes, I'm a mother of 4 children ranging in age from 3 to 10. I had my last baby like at the height of COVID because we were just nailing it on all fronts at that point. So why not throw another baby in the mix?
Why not get nailed?
Why not? You know, we were just making good choices. The world was on fire. Why not? Why not? So when I, myself, a professional in the reproductive space, found myself unexpectedly pregnant with a 4th baby and did not have a safe place to put it, I kind of took a little bit of time off from my NP job. And when I went back, I knew that I wanted to do birth and parenting support better than I had seen it or that I'd been able to do as an NP. I felt like I increasingly had less and less time to spend with people. I was pressured to throw really small band-aids at really big problems or really big situations. And the things that I've always really loved doing are providing education, are really building relationships with clients. I am a firm believer that everybody is the best possible decision maker for themselves and for their families, and that what healthcare providers need to do a lot more of is listening, is gathering information and finding out sort of what are the specifics about this person that are going to help to guide us to a really good plan of care to keep them healthy and help them thrive. So I felt really passionate about that. And when I started thinking about going back to the same old thing, I was like, I just can't do this. And also, I just can't keep giving birth myself. I love giving birth. I would do it every day, but I needed to be done. So started thinking about what my ideal days would look like, and went out on a limb, built this business, and haven't looked back. So I'm just over here running this business, parenting my children, trying to maintain a relationship with my husband, who I still have a wild crush on 20 years into our relationship. And we also have a puppy who bites everything and eats everything. So,
of course,
still crushing it. Still doing great.
Okay. Go back to the crush on your husband. 20 years of knowing him.
Yeah.
Okay.
20 years of monogamy with him, Chelsea. That's like a milestone. Isn't that wild?
That is.
I don't feel old enough because I'm only 25. So I'm not.
Of course, with 4 kids. What were those like gooey, crushy things at the beginning, and what are they now?
Oh my gosh. Well, it has been, we both thank our lucky stars all the time that we are still together, because we laugh about the fact that, so we met each other when we were 18. We started dating when we were 20. And we are very different people than the people who started that relationship at 20. And we both just feel really lucky that we kind of grew up in the same direction, right? And some of that is influencing each other. And honestly, I feel like some of that is just dumb luck, because the things that attracted to me at the beginning were that, he was the life of the party. We joke, but it's true that like one of the first nights that we had googly eyes for each other, he was doing cannonballs off the roof of a house into a pool. Like, why did I look at that man and think like, yes, that is some DNA that I'm going to pass on. That's a good bet. I'm going to make that bet. But at the time he was cute and he was funny and he was kind and he was smart, and I liked hanging out with him. And like, yeah, he was also a little bit more wild than me, which I think I needed. Honestly, I think I needed to come out of my shell a little bit and let some of my type A guard down. And then, like I said, 20 years later, now he's in finance and I'm chaotic. And every other day I'm like, we should get chickens and we should go on an adventure. And he's like, this is fantastic for us, but like, let's think about it for a minute. So I think that we've just been really lucky that, like I said, we've continued to be really interested in each other as we've grown up, and have figured out how to negotiate a whole lot of changes over the last 20 years and still find each other hilarious and fun. Which is really nice.
Yeah. This is so off the cuff, but like,
I'm ready.
Can you tell about a time that you had to choose to enjoy that? Like, I hear this story a lot, right? We get together and we go years, decades, and you're not the same person. What is it like to choose, to grow? I love how you said that, like you kind of grow together, and I am on the same page with you. Like, I think there are just times where people don't grow together in the same direction. So there's no shade there, but also there's a lot of choosing, when that is feasible, to keep choosing to love and grow and accept and learn and understand your partner as they change and grow.
Yeah, totally. I mean, one of the bigger things that stands out to me is that my husband has changed his career path radically from what we went to school for in undergrad. So he went back to school for 2 additional graduate degrees over the course of our marriage. And both of them were just excellently timed with like pregnancies and like a lot of things going on. Right. And, those could have been really stressful moments, right? That like both times, again, my husband is probably the smartest person I've ever met. Like, he was in good jobs, like he was on really good paths. And so, when he came home, or, over time began saying more and more, like, I'm not happy here, I'm unfulfilled here, like, I think I would be better suited in this other space. That didn't come without stress to say, okay, let's get off this. Again, I'm pretty type A. I'm pretty easy breezy when it comes to what my hopes and dreams are in life. Like, all of my needs and wants were being met with sort of the way that things were. And so I didn't feel super motivated by change, right? By change in either the direction of adventure, the direction of more money, like any of those things. Like, those weren't my motivators in doing it. So it could have been really stressful that he was saying, okay, like, let's actually pause on this job. Let's go back to school. Let's invest this money. Let's do this thing, and let's see if this other path is better. But part of that choice is knowing that for me, and I guess I hope for everybody who's in a relationship, that my life is best when he is fired up and full of passion and full of energy and is excited by what the day holds, right? And thinking about him staying on a path that, even if it served my needs, my family's needs, whatever, just seeing him not feel happy in his life, or not feel excited in his life, or feel like he was missing out on something. I knew that in itself would be sort of a compromise to our group happiness, to our family happiness. And so it's, deciding, okay, well, we're going to have to make some real sacrifices, some real big changes that I don't care about in order for the whole of the system to work well. Right. And he's done similar things for me, maybe not the exact same progression, but it's figuring out, I think, or reminding ourselves or recentering ourselves on the fact that, like, for the family to survive, like, the individuals have to be good.
Thank you for sharing all of that. It's just really fun to hear background pieces of people's relationship story, because everyone is so different. But yet we also, I think, can learn and glean so much from hearing one another's experience. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Let's take a turn into the trying to conceive space.
Yes.
And first of all, just to kind of set this stage, what are some of the big themes that you see in couples who are trying to conceive? What are the maybe invisible weights that they're carrying? What are the common denominators? How does this impact someone's life that maybe, if you're not in it, you don't know?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I think that's such a great question. So first of all, I guess it's important for me to mention up front and hold space up front for the fact that in this conversation we're having, I guess we are mostly talking about heterosexual couples here. We're talking about people who are trying to make babies with their own eggs, their own sperm within the couple, because there's lots of different ways to make babies. But and there's lots of different ways that people on their trying to conceive journeys can be impacted by that process. But specifically, if you are trying to make a baby the old-fashioned way, is there anything less romantic than trying to time sex to biological schedules that might not be at odds with, or that might be at odds with your life schedule? Is there anything that puts more pressure on the situation than saying, like, okay, we've got to do this exactly right in order for us to get this big, enormous thing that we're really working for and that we're both really invested in? So there's first of all sort of the disconnection and the, I think, sort of sterilization that happens of your romantic life and your sex life when you all of a sudden want to have sex for a purpose, right? And then there's all kinds of different layers, so I see in almost every couple that's trying to conceive for longer than, maybe a couple of months, lots of different imbalances of how much people are actually desiring sex, or how much fun they're having when they're having sex with their partner. I see a lot of scenarios where one partner is more motivated than another, and that is not always the female partner. But when there's one partner who really, really wants the baby and the other partner is kind of like, yeah, I guess a baby could be cool, but like, whatever, if it doesn't hit this month, not a big deal. So that can start to cause some disconnection or some resentment in either direction, right? Of just kind of wanting things, having a different priority to these goals. And then there's just a lot of stress and pressure that can come the longer you've been trying to conceive without getting, that reward of that baby. Do we start talking about changes in your daily practices? Do we start talking about changes in diet and exercise, going to doctors? There are all kinds of different layers to this that can come in, and all of that creates this really sort of this kind of wet blanket that lays over your home life, right?
Yeah.
If you've gone a few months of really wanting a baby and you don't have a baby, all of a sudden everything you do is about the fact that you don't have a baby.
Yeah.
And that's a really, really hard way to go through every day.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. As you were saying that, there were a couple of thoughts that came up in my mind. One is like, I cannot have great sex if I have a running to-do list in my head,
No.
just the like,
No.
don't forget, maybe
Right.
it's as simple as like, don't forget to switch the laundry before you fall asleep,
Right.
or don't forget to, and so thinking about how, of course, another stressor, another layer,
Right.
can create challenges. And I mean, I see this usually on the after end, which I hope we can get into talking about a little bit, when people are trying to rebuild their intimacy after sex being really about trying to conceive. But then the other thing, as you were talking, I'm like, oh my gosh, I am imagining what that would be like for all of these doctors to be like, okay, and then how many times are you having sex, or what, like you have to start really putting it out there, and it becomes like a public display.
Yes. And the questions that we're asking, it's how often are you having sex? What days is it? What positions are you having sex in? Does your husband ever have trouble with erection because you're trying to have sex then? And we're asking these questions in front of him, and he's like, this is not something I thought that we were going to discuss today. So all of a sudden, this thing that's supposed to be this, this really special thing that's between you, that you probably are not used to sharing a lot of nitty-gritty details with people with, all of a sudden, not only are you trying to get it exactly right and sort of mechanicize it, but then all of a sudden you're having to share details about this with other people with the express purpose of helping them to understand if you're doing it wrong, right?
Yeah.
How weird is that? It's a really weird concept. And so, so those levels can really build upon each other the longer that it goes on. And so many people too, I don't think I mentioned this, but as we all know, so many people who are struggling with infertility, or even that are just early in their trying to conceive journey, oftentimes you don't tell a lot of people about that. So you might not have any support or lots of meaningful support outside of your partner, which yes, it's a special thing. Yes, it's often a private thing. Yes, it's something that's about the two of you. But if you're having negative feelings about it, if you're feeling nervous, scared, bored with your sex life, annoyed with your partner, if you're feeling all of these things and you don't have anywhere to put them other than that partner, it can really start to get complicated and get messy.
Yeah, I can see that. I think with so many things, that's true, that we kind of I'm going to say how to say that. I see myself often helping my clients find other buckets for their decompression, for their external processing, for their emotions, because it does get very, very messy when it is just you and your partner holding space for all of that. So I think that's a really important thing you bring up, is if, someone is going through this pretty solo with their partner, it is likely that is going to exacerbate some of those feelings, and even the words and the arguments and the discouragement between the couple.
Totally.
Yeah. Okay. What else do you see from couples that are trying to conceive and it's impacting intimacy, emotional connection? And if you're working with someone, how do you even start with them on prioritizing intimacy, emotional connection, while being on this, as you said, kind of a mechanical journey in a lot of ways?
Yeah. So again, so every client is different. Every path is different. But so if we are early in the journey, I'm providing information like, first of all, a lot of us don't actually get good information in school or throughout our life of how to make a baby, that there are literally a few days a month that are good to make a baby, and the other days those are just for fun. And so sometimes one partner knows the deal, sometimes neither partner knows the deal. But so first of all, we're getting on the page of, okay, like here is actually how it happens, and here is when you are most likely to conceive. So we start with that. But a lot of couples come to me after they've been trying for a little bit and things that either aren't happening, they've had a loss, something has gone on where they're wanting a little bit of extra support. And so a lot of people are coming to me kind of already with some of those feelings. So when we're starting out from the beginning, I really try and hammer home from the beginning that, like, hey, again, like I said, there is nothing that is going to change the tenor of your sex life, like trying to have sex for a purpose. Like, up to this point in your life, you have been having sex for fun, hopefully, and for connection and for intimacy. And every month you've been crossing your fingers that that's all that you're going to get out of it, right? And then all of a sudden, when it's about this bigger purpose, it can feel really loaded. And so I try to remind people from the beginning, like, as much as you can, you've got to let that go. You've got to remember that you are with this person because you like them, because you like having sex with them, because it feels good and it's fun and you feel better after. And we're going to keep doing that. We're just going to make sure we do it on a few specific days during the month. That's all. So, like, how can we work that in? When I'm working with couples who have been trying for a while and are kind of past that point of, like, yeah, we've sort of lost the fun of this. Again, it's sitting down and having a lot of really intimate conversations with people about where they're at and what's working for them and what's not. So, we often get to that point where sex all of a sudden has become really scheduled and really regimented, because you do want to, hit a certain couple of days to make sure things are right. A lot of people have already gone to the internet and gotten a lot of often misinformation about what they can do to optimize the sex that they're having, how they can do it right. And man, again, if there is no better pressure than trying to do sex right every time, like, man, doesn't that sound fun to you? Yeah. Sure sounds fun to me. So people can have these preconceived notions about what they need to do in order to maximize their chances of conceiving. And spoiler alert, a lot of those are not necessarily super compatible with either fun sex or comfortable sex or sex that you want to have, right? So a lot of times we have already gotten into the space where, particularly, again, if I can generalize, a lot of times it's the female partner in these heterosexual couples who's like, oh, okay, like, we have to have sex today because this is the time we conceive. You've got, you have to orgasm.
Get on.
I'm just going to be here. Yeah. And wow, isn't that fun for everybody involved? And so people can be starting to carry these deeper seated resentments of, male partners feeling a lot of pressure to perform, and also feeling like, I don't like how this is feeling in my body, that, like, I'm needed for this service that clearly my partner isn't enjoying, and then, and then we're kind of going down this path of feeling even more disconnected. I'm not actually sure if that answered your question. I just kind of went off on a tangent there.
I think it was really
cool. It was useful.
Important information.
Yeah.
Yes. Do you have any, like, ideas, brain starters that you give people for keeping sex kind of fun and spontaneous in the midst of this time?
Absolutely. So the first thing I do when people, specifically when they've been trying for a little while, is I like to sort of level set about the fact that basically it's very hard to do sex wrong when we're trying to conceive. Okay. Yes, there is about a 5 or 6 day period where, in an ideal world, it would be great if we had sex a couple times in there each month. If, in order to have sperm present to meet egg, we got to get some sperm inside a vagina sometime in the 6 day period, right? And ideally a couple of times would be ideal. But as long as we can get sperm in there, there's really no other wrong answer. So again, I'm having these very frank conversations with people about, like, okay, what have you heard about how you need to do this in order to maximize your chances? Mostly, I want you to throw that out the window. There are a lot of things that we can do to make sure that everybody is able to have as much fun as possible. So, for example, many people have heard that you shouldn't use any sort of lubricant if you're trying to have sex. That's not true. There are some lubricants that are friendly to sperm and some lubricants that are not friendly to sperm. So I help you to find one that is friendly to sperm, because if you are somebody that needs to use lubricant during sex and instead you're having really uncomfortable sex that's causing chafing and damage and pain, and then you need to have sex again a few days later, like, ow, 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 I wouldn't want to do that either. So, so yes, you can use lubricant. And if you're having sex multiple times in a several day period and that's not your norm, you probably should be. So we're talking about that. Many people have heard that if you're trying to conceive, that you should really have sex in missionary position, and then when you're done, you should put your legs up in the air, or, you know, do a handstand. I don't know. That is overkill. You can have sex in any position that feels good for both partners. That's wonderful. Missionary position is not going to make much of a difference. Yes, there are some positions where we employ more gravity, you know, and where we can certainly see that, you know, that semen can leak out after sex. But even if we're standing up, or we're going to get really deep into the sex talk today. Chelsea, get ready.
I am like wide-eyed fascinated.
Yeah. But so even if we're standing up and like some semen leaks out immediately after your partner ejaculates, there's still some that's on the inside, and semen is loaded with sperm. There are millions and millions and millions in there. So even if we lose millions and millions, there's still more in there. It is true that positions with deeper penetration do tend to put sperm in closer position to your cervix, which can be ideal. But some people, so those typically would be things like doggy style, you know, where you just get sort of deeper penetration. And if that's something that works for you, great, that's wonderful. If that's something that feels uncomfortable, as it often does for women, because deeper penetration often means that your cervix is being bumped, and some people don't find that comfortable. If that doesn't feel comfortable, don't worry about it. Have sex in a position that's comfortable. You do not have to lay down or put your legs up in the air after sex, but that is one easy thing that you can do to kind of maintain the connection is, okay, so let's just plan on, let's lay down after, let's cuddle after. If you aren't in a place after where you're feeling like, I want to have the schmoopy conversations about how much I love you because I'm feeling a little stressed, my favorite recommendation is like, have sex. If you don't have a TV in your bedroom, have sex in the room with the TV. And when you're done, lay down and cuddle and watch a funny show. Watch whatever show makes you laugh. Have those loving, lovey-dovey, low-key feelings so that you can get out of your head a little bit. So you can be together having a fun time when you're done, so that you're having that emotional connection still, but you can separate it a little bit from this act that has become about something else. So that's a tip I like to give, is have sex in front of the TV. If it's feeling fraught afterwards, as it does for a lot of people.
That's brilliant.
Right? I mean, I suppose you could like other things besides TV, but I just really like TV. And sometimes your brain just needs a little bit of a break. Yeah. Let's see, other things I recommend. Okay, so, alcohol is controversial, do your own research on substances and pregnancy and things like that. What I will say, because I'm going to stop short of giving recommendations here, but I will say that the US's attitude towards, alcohol in pregnancy, I think is pretty outdated and conservative. Particularly if you know you are not pregnant and you are trying to conceive. If you are somebody for whom a glass of wine makes you feel floaty and happy and more present in your body and makes your husband adorable, have a glass of wine, do that. That's fine. If that doesn't make you feel comfortable, again, whatever you can do during that time when you're trying to conceive so that you are feeling happy and relaxed. Yeah. Those feelings are going to contribute to that intimacy you create. So maybe that means, like I said, maybe that's funny show before you watch or before you have sex. Maybe that is spending some time with the friends that make you laugh during those days. Maybe it's you and your partner going on dates or doing the fun activities together that you want to do just outside of having sex that, that are helpful. One other thing that I see a lot of, again, when sex becomes more about the end point than about the journey, is that foreplay goes by the wayside, right? Because if we're like, okay, we've got to have sex every other day for these 6 days, like we're going to get it in, we're going to get it out, we're going to move on with our day. Yeah. Like I would otherwise not be interested in having sex with you today, but like we got to do it. So here we go. So let's do it as fast as possible and move on. That's not a good way to have sex, right? We all know that. So I remind people that foreplay is really important. again, some of the misconception, there was this one study from like the early 80s that showed allegedly, I'm doing my air quotes here, that suggested that saliva was harmful to sperm. And so many people come in with the understanding that you should not have any sort of oral sex, oral foreplay, anything like that when you're trying to conceive, because you could damage sperm. That study has not been replicated. I've got some questions about it, but it's still like widely cited and widely referenced by my clients and other people that I've spoken with. So I like to reassure patients that, it has to be like a whole lot of saliva, and it has an impact on some sperm, not all. So absolutely, you can still participate in the same forms of foreplay that generally work for you. And sometimes I think, like, I encourage couples to make it kind of a game. Like, okay, so like, we know that we have to have sex on Tuesday. Like, we've got to do it. It is literally on the to-do list. This is important to both of us. Otherwise, Tuesday's kind of a busy day. It probably wouldn't be the thing for us. So, whatever it is that usually works for you, you can absolutely try. But I often recommend that whoever the partner is, who's got the higher libido or the higher sex drive, the one who's sort of like always in the mood if they just think about it for a little bit, which again, if we're going to stereotype, it is not always this way, but a lot of times it's the male partner. But it doesn't even matter. I'm not even going to reference it. But so whoever the partner is that has the higher sex drive, that kind of can get themselves there faster, I say, okay, so that the two of you have to have sex on Tuesday. You both know that you're going to have sex on Tuesday. You both know that you have your partner's consent to have sex on Tuesday. Like, this is going to happen. But your job is, like, the second you guys get home from work on Tuesday, like, you are wooing the crap out of your partner. You are trying to have sex with them every minute. You are pulling out every trick in the book to make them feel sexy and wanted. And, you're doing all the things, and make it a game. And then partner who has the lower sex drive, you're holding out as long as possible. Again, that you're going to have sex tonight. Like, that's happening. But you're waiting and you're making the other partner work for it. And it can become sort of a fun little game where we're doing the things that we know work for each other. But essentially it just means we are trying to make this partner feel loved. We are trying to make this partner feel wanted. We're trying to remind them that they are a sexual person in a sexual body, and that we are going to do a fun thing together. Not just that, like, we are going to do this utilitarian thing to serve our goal.
Yeah. Okay. That's so
I do a lot of like helping people brainstorm. Yeah. What can we do to make this enjoyable?
Yeah. That's awesome. Something I kind of picked up on a few times, which I guess I knew, but you're just helping me to think about it even more and differently, is the importance of comfort and relaxation as opposed to stressing over the very specific ways of doing things.
Yep.
Why is that important?
Yeah. Well, because if there's a way to get it right, there's a way to get it wrong, right? And I think that sets people up for a lot of resentment and competition and just general bad feelings. And I think, again, when you want something so badly, so many of us are just, we will do anything. We will work as hard as it takes. We will do hard things to get these things to happen. And we don't really want to turn sex into a hard thing. That is hard. It's a really weird, it's weird how it's positioned in this baby making process, right? Because it's supposed to be fun and enjoyable and connection and all of those things. And trying to get it right really takes it out of that spot as the thing that you guys do for you to maintain connection and to have fun. And it turns it into this test that you could fail. And that's really hard for anybody to come back from. So a lot of what I do is just telling people, like, listen, we got to get semen in vagina one of these 6 days and I'm happy. 3 of these 6 days and I'm throwing a party, right? But that's it. That is all we have to do. And you know how to do that. You are not doing this wrong. There is nothing that you can do, there are not many things that you can do to change the mechanics of it. Like, I have never once had a client come to me who has been doing it wrong. The terrible and pervasive joke, like, are you putting it in the right hole? Like, yes, okay, like, this is hilarious. But yeah, so reminding people that they probably are already doing everything right, and like they really probably don't need to tweak anything unless it feels good to tweak, unless it feels like, oh, this is an improvement we could make. And then helping people to lean into like, okay, well then, so if we theoretically can get pregnant 6 days a month, and then there's 24 other ones, what is the rest of the month going to look like? And actually having those conversations of like, okay, well, like, so before we were having a baby, how much sex were we having? Was that enough for both partners? Was it not enough for both partners? Were there months that things changed? Like, what did that look like? Like, what would an ideal sex life look like for us? If we know that there's going to be this 1 week out of the month where we're going to try to do things kind of a certain way, that still leaves 3 weeks where we get to do anything we want. And so what can we do to remember that the rest of the month we get to kind of sign off? That we can put this away, that we've done everything we have until the next month. Like, what can we do to reconnect during that space? And that's going to be different for every couple. There are plenty of couples who are like, yeah, like neither of us are really feeling it the rest of the month. That's okay. So maybe that looks like saying, maybe you're being really explicit with your partner that, okay, like tonight, I'm not fertile. I am not in the mood for sex, but I'm feeling lonely. Like, can we please cuddle up and read our book or talk or watch TV, do whatever the things are, and please don't make a move on me tonight. Like, I am not open for sex. I just don't want it, but I really want to be with you. And being explicit, letting your partner know, I am not rejecting you. I think you are sexy and cute, and I still want to build this family with you, and I still think you're great. But tonight, I'm not in my body, I'm in my head, and just setting that limit up front. And then partners are like, okay, like, I understand what you need. I understand that this snuggle is not an invitation, and I can respect your boundary. And then, sometimes that snuggle does become an invitation, because then you're there and that oxytocin is flowing, and oxytocin is the love hormone and the orgasm hormone and the labor hormone, which I think is really wonderful. But sometimes that closeness begets intimacy, and sometimes the intimacy begets closeness. And so it's sort of understanding who is who in the relationship, and how to give your partner what they need to give you what you need, right? How to meet them where they are sexually, even if you're not quite in that exact spot that day, right? Isn't that just like the journey of long relationships?
Yeah. You said a line that I think is really helpful in sex in general, when you said, I'm not in my body, I'm in my head. And I'm like, oh, that's such a clear, direct way,
right?
To say that. And it also makes room if that does change, your partner,
totally.
Not that they should manipulate you into getting into your body space.
Exactly. But it's sort of, and like sometimes, depending on how clear certain partners need things to be about what we mean by that, like, putting it out there that like, so that means absolutely, like, you are making no moves. And we are just like, you cannot do anything. Like, it is a firm closed door, no consent. But then if your partner turns around and starts making out with you,
check in.
You can ask, or you can follow the lead and say, has your perspective on this evening changed? And sort of see how things go. Because sometimes, haven't we all been in that situation where we're like, this is not happening? And then all of a sudden, an hour later, the to-do list has cleared and we're with our person. And all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, like, okay, I can come back to here. But being really clear that like, we do not have to be performing sex throughout the month and throughout the months of trying, that like we can go on and off. We can take months off. Lots of times people don't want to do that, which I completely understand. But if it feels like things are way too heightened and that we are at a point where we are like, where nobody is liking their life, their partner, etc., like, we need to take a month off and take a breath. There are plenty of things that we can do to sort of reset that. But I think that more than anything, open and honest communication, being really clear with your partner about what your motivations and limitations are. Because I think a lot of times, not just when you're trying to conceive, but a lot of times in these, in sexual relationships, when one partner says, I'm not in the mood, what the other partner hears is, you don't find me attractive, right? And that's so rarely the case. I mean, yes, it probably is the case some of the time, but so much of the time it is, no, my tummy actually hurts, or I have been touched by these children all day, and like, I cannot have you touch me in a way that feels like another need, another request from me. It's all the things. But it's being really clear with your person that like, oh, like, I wish I was in the mood for sex with you tonight. I'm not. I'm feeling too stressed out about this. Sex is feeling too much like a chore. I'm feeling like my body is failing and like it's my fault. And I just don't feel good. And like, and then your partner, and by the way, I still think you are adorable and you have the cutest face I've ever seen in my life. And I don't want to have sex with anybody else. I want to have sex with everybody else in the world, so much less than I want to have sex with you. But I also don't want to have sex with you right now.
Oh, clear communication is so sexy. It's so
right?
nice.
Right?
Yes.
And then so often you can get so many of your needs met by being clear about it. But like, oh, I'm sorry, that does feel so isolating to feel alone. I'm so sorry. Like, what can we do to take care of you instead? But so being really clear about it. And then, of course, whenever we can, bringing in those trusted sources of support. Because yes, your partner is your person. Yes, the two of you are building this baby, this family together. But asking your partner in this sometimes difficult journey to be your only source of emotional support, your only repository for your fears and your worries and your annoyances and all of that, that is just a recipe for resentment and disaster and no fun. You've both got to have places where you can release all of the tension and those fears, and get support, right?
What does support look like in that space?
Yeah, that's a great question. So like, what does it look like as far as who is there to support you, or what does it look like as far as like,
so I think my question is someone who is maybe they're in a TTC space and maybe they're working with their OB, they know, or maybe their primary care doctor knows this, but I think that maybe we don't all know what kinds of support are available on that journey.
Yes, makes total sense. Okay. So first of all, again, back to open communication. I think you should be honest with your partner about who your sources of support are, particularly if you're talking about your sex life, right? Because different couples have different boundaries around like, okay, what if this is just for us? What if this is stuff we share with our friends? Who knows what? Which families members are involved? Which of them know that we're trying to conceive? Who has the really intrusive parent who's going to be asking all kinds of questions about our sex life and making the other one feel really uncomfortable? So who's our inner circle of support? Who's our like further out circles of support? And like, what are our boundaries as a couple around what we share, right? So it's always great if we can get on the same page early to figure out what that is. And I think, again, I always talk to people about these like sort of like who's the inner circle, who's the outer circle, and understanding that we don't define those circles based on like familial relationships, like the time we've known people. We define those based on like who gives us the support we need, who can be trusted with our confidences, who do we both feel safe with. And so that can be really different for everybody. But a lot of times, your inner circle of support when it comes to fertility issues, couple issues, whatever, like it likely might not be your family of origin. You might have that relationship with your mom or your dad or your sister or whoever it is that like they are your person that you can share the nitty gritty details with, but it might not be. It might be that the person who is your inner circle for fertility support, is your coworker that like you don't do stuff with outside of work, but they just went through this and they always say the right thing, and and they're just supportive in that way that you need. So it might be this person, that might not normally be in there. That's okay. But then, so both of you having sort of those friends or close confidants that you can release certain information to, I think is important. Again, to stereotype here, if we can talk about male partners, I think they do a they do a worse job of having
Yeah.
these people.
Yeah.
Typically, I think that we just do not socialize men to create sort of emotional vulnerability within their spaces the way we allow women to, and that is too bad. That's something that we've done wrong, and that hopefully we're going to do better for our sons now. But helping them to figure out that, like, yeah, like, there can be a person that you talk about this with, like, in a way that's not locker room talk, right? You don't have to go in and, brag about how your sex life is doing. You don't have to give the play-by-play in order to, like, get support from somebody. Like, there are ways to release this information that are not damaging or hurtful to other people.
Yeah.
But then always recommend having some professional support on your side, right? Having somebody that you are paying for their expert opinion, advice, who've been there before, who aren't going to blink an eye, who are going to know where to direct you to for resources, and that you understand that there's a level of confidentiality. There's a level of, like, I am coming to this space, or I'm coming to this person in order to release some of this that I'm carrying. And it's in the best possible way, that it's not a two-way relationship, right? That if I'm sharing this with my friend, I'm expecting that I'm going to tell them some things, they're going to tell me some things, we're going to help each other out. When you're enlisting professional support, that's just your place to put stuff. And that unburdening, I think, is really important. I really love when people are able to work together as a couple. Yes, individual support is good. We might need both levels in this journey, but yes, I definitely recommend reaching out for support beyond your OB, beyond your doctor that you're spending 5 minutes with, a couple times a year. I think that that's really important. So, that coaching, relationship coaching, I think, is so important. Mental health care, couples counseling, seeing, getting fertility support from somebody like me who's meeting with both of you and trying to do some sort of holistic care of the family and, be a cheerleader for you from the side. I think it's really important to bring in somebody that you trust, that you feel comfortable telling your secrets to, telling your deepest, vulnerabilities to, and being able to kind of support you as a couple.
Yeah. What are a couple of things that people maybe come to you for, or, like, what are the questions running through their head that maybe their OB isn't the person for, or maybe their therapist isn't the person for, that somebody specifically dealing with fertility and conception, like yourself, would be a helpful resource?
Yeah, absolutely. So I work with people and couples sort of all across the spectrum when it comes to their reproductive health. So I see people anywhere from not trying to conceive and trying actively to prevent pregnancy and wanting more information on options, to people who are sort of pre-contemplative, people who know, for instance, I see a lot of people who, like, okay, I just got married. We don't want a baby this year, but, like, maybe we'll start trying in a year or two. What do we do to kind of get positioned well for that? All the way to people who have been trying for a while and either, it's not happening, or people who went through a long fertility journey to get baby number 1, and now they're getting ready to try for baby number 2 or 3, or kind of get back on that train. So I see people the whole way around. So what we're doing is different for everybody. But but basically they're to support that whole process. I think I forgot your question again, Chelsea. So mark this. What was the original question?
Like, what I'm imagining, some people in my life.
So what do I offer that's not, that your doctor is not offering, or whatever? Okay.
Yeah. Like, what would be running through my head?
Yeah.
What questions would I have that someone would say, oh, actually, Erin would be really helpful for this?
Okay. Yes, I'm ready. Okay. So the benefit when you are trying to conceive of working with somebody like me is that what I can give you, and what many people like me can give you, is time, which is something that the healthcare system that I was raised in, unfortunately, doesn't always make space for. That typically what you will hear if you go into your doctor or even your midwife and you tell them, okay, I'm thinking of conceiving, or I'm trying to conceive, you will get a really standard set of answers almost everywhere, which is, if you are trying to conceive, they will say, oh yeah, just, like, do any birth control, stop your birth control about 3 months in advance, and, like, you'll probably get pregnant. Spoiler alert, I've got a lot of other things that I would recommend there. If you have been trying to conceive for a while, what they will say is, well, if you're under 35, you need to try to conceive for a year before we'll do any sort of testing or look into this any further. If you're over 35, you have to try to conceive for more than 6 months before we'll do any sort of testing or talk about this further. And in the meantime, there's nothing else you should really be doing during that time. Just like have sex, it'll be fun. So you're getting this very limited formulaic advice that or if you've had losses, well, you need to have 3 in a row, and then we'll do some testing to see if like we need to do anything any differently. If you come to me, I'm going to say, okay, you're concerned about this now. Let's talk about it now. Let's talk about the things that we can do to optimize your fertility, no matter where you are in this space. Because yes, we are born with all the eggs in our body that we're ever going to have, but there are actually things that we can do from a lifestyle perspective to help maximize the quality of your eggs each month. So let's talk about what you're doing already and what we can start doing right now to just sort of move the needle a little bit. Yes, I've said that, you really don't have to do sex a certain way in order for it to work. But I can get feedback on exactly how things are going for you. And I can let you know either like, oh my gosh, you guys are having sex every day of the month trying to have a baby. No wonder you're exhausted. Have sex 3 times this week. And then the rest of the month, do whatever you want. So I'm able to like sort of identify problems, but areas that we can change or that we can adjust much earlier than you otherwise might get that. And you're also going to get ongoing support from me. When you work with me, when you work with you, when you work with anybody for whom supporting your relationship and your process is part of the deal, there's more ongoing support. I don't have my doctor's number. I can't text and say, we just had another negative text. That's probably not something that you're going to be sharing. Whereas with me, you're going to say, we had another negative test, and I'm going to send you a meme, depending on our relationship and what your level is. But, I'm going to send you a sassy swear word meme. And you guys are going to giggle a little bit together. And then and then you're going to have a beer and maybe you're going to have sex. So you're going to know that you're going to have that point of support all the way along. For my couples that are even further down the road on their fertility journey, so people who are undergoing IVF or who are doing other assisted reproductive stuff, I'm also there on a clinical level to help make sure you're doing things right. I can't tell you how often these mail order pharmacies will send you, they'll just drop $30,000 worth of medications on your doorstep with a really short page of instructions on how to use them, and oftentimes the wrong size needles for the medications that you're using. And so, people typically are just sort of trying to figure it out, and you might not have a lot of comfort with these clinical skills. You might be really nervous, and it's really nerve-wracking. Whereas when you work with me, I'm watching you open the package on FaceTime, and I'm like, oh, those needles are too small. It's going to take you 3.5 hours to get that medication in. You either need to call the pharmacy or call your doctor and say, I need these exact needles, and go get them before it closes. So I'm able to sort of troubleshoot things or help people to troubleshoot things. So providing both that sort of clinical support while I'm not there to be your reproductive endocrinologist or replace them. I'm there to help make sure that you understand what all of your options are, and that you feel that you really have the opportunity to consider the risks and benefits and gather the resources you need to feel good about the choices you're making in this journey.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of having the kind of support that you describe, professional, but also friendly, on your side, invested in your success. I think that's what's really special about things that, people like you or I do.
Yeah. So fun.
Do you have any other words of comfort or rays of love that you like to send to people who are maybe just sitting in that space of trying to conceive and maybe hitting some road bumps or feeling discouraged?
Yeah. So one of the things I always want people to know, or that I reassure them of, and I don't, this was helpful to me during our own journey of trying to build our family and having it not go exactly the way we thought it was going to go at all points, is I try and remind people, and maybe this sounds a little bit woo, but it always made sense to me, is that no matter where you are on the journey, your baby is out there, and they might be taking their time. They might be lost. They might be at a party. I don't know what they're doing. They're not here yet, but eventually they're going to be here.
Yeah.
And once your baby is here, it will all make sense. You will do it all over again. It will all be worth it. But it's kind of fucked up because you don't know them yet, right? You don't know them yet. You're not sure where they are, but they're out there. And I just tell people, like, listen, like, you know, you're working for your baby. Like, look around. Do you want anybody else's baby? Like, you don't actually want those babies. You don't want your sister-in-law's baby. You don't want this baby over here. You can feel the pangs of wishing that it was your turn and really wanting it to be your turn and really wanting it to happen. But like, ultimately you are waiting for the key in the lock for you. And so trying to remind you that, like, you are working for something really special. I don't know what bus that baby is on. I don't know how they're going to arrive or when, but they're coming. And so just kind of helping people to key in on the fact that, like, this is something special. This is something real. And just holding space. I am eternally positive and optimistic. I think everybody is going to find their baby. And I'm just there to help hold you up until your baby finally gets on that GD bus, you know? And I'm there to give them their first lecture when they're born. And I'm like, man, you really made your parents work for this.
Yes. Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah. Well, thank you for joining for this conversation.
Thank you for having me. This was so fun.
Yeah. Yeah, you're going to have to do it again, okay? So anyone listening who has a podcast, you're going to want Erin.
Anybody who wants me to talk about sex for any period of time, I'm happy to do it.
Perfect. That's how I first knew I loved you.
Yes.
It's great. Well, thank you, Erin. And if someone wants to get in contact with you after hearing this, I will, of course, put some contact information in the show notes, but where do you feel the most ease in
where do I live in the world?
Yes.
Yes. So I have one social media account, which is I'm on Instagram, and my handle is Thrive Doula Columbus on Instagram. You can also find me on the internet. My website is thrivedoulacolumbus.com. And if you are interested in working with me or hearing more about what I do, the website is the best place to reach out. I offer a free meet and greet phone call with anybody who wants to chat through options or what they're going through, and happy to let you know how my services either could serve you, or if there's somewhere that you might be better served, I'm happy to do that as well. But so free meet and greets through there. I work with clients both locally here in Central Ohio as well as virtually. So you do not need to be located in Ohio to schedule a meet and greet or to work with me on fertility and infertility care. And do want to let you know as well that if you reach out to me and are interested in working together because you've heard this podcast, that you can use the code Chelsea, all uppercase, CHELSEA, for a $50 discount on any fertility, either first time session or package. So thank you for letting me chat today. And I just love everything you're doing. And I think it is just so important to help people maintain their relationships as they move into this parenting space. So thank you for being you.
Yes. Well, they have to have, a healthy beginning too. If you enjoyed this episode, I would be so grateful if you take a minute to help spread the word. As a small business owner, shares and reviews go a long way. So share this episode with a friend, share it on your social media, and please leave a review if you haven't done so. This helps these messages get to more mamas, and you guys, that's how we change the world.